Hello and welcome to a CourseCast edition of the Share.Care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. And today, we're continuing on with our Septemics seminar with Jim Marshall, and this is part 3 as we look at the individual scales.
Welcome to Share.Care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.Care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.Care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
And today, it is again my great pleasure to welcome back Jim Marshall as we continue on with Septemics. This is part 3 of Jim going through each of the different axes within Septemics to explain how they work and how they can help you. Jim, pleasure to have you back.
Thank you, Damien.
Well, let me get started. I'll just share the screen. We'll get straight into it. So we should be up now. Let me just make that start the slideshow. Where is it? Slideshow. Start from current slide. There we go. So we're talking about the scale of memory.
Yeah, I think we finished that one.
Did we? We did. We move on. So scale of spiritual identity. That's the one. Yes, correct.
Right. Okay. So let me just say, for anyone who does not know, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I crafted a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. A Septemics comprises 35 different scales, and today we're going to talk about some of those scales, beginning with the scale of spiritual identity.
Do you just want to touch on two, because there's 2 different components to the scales. There's individual scales and then there's group scales. Is that right?
Yes, and this is one of the individual scales.
Right. Okay. And this is, so it's a spirituality. It's linear, so it goes from straightforward and it's quantum. So you jump from one to the next. Is that correct? And
that's right. There's no intervening stage.
Yeah. And do you want to explain the general component on that slide?
Sure. Well, there are general scales and specific scales. Now, in a specific scale, you use it in a specific context. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the scale of motivation. You could talk about your motivation toward your wife, your motivation toward your son, your motivation toward your boss, etc. In the scale of spiritual identity, it's general, meaning you find your level and that's it. You have a level and every other person has a level. And once you find it, you're done. Now, You can try to move up, of course, that's always a possibility, but it's not like you can use it in specific contexts.
Yeah. Okay. And the scales, as you say, the cause, the total cause and total effect. Do you want to explain what that side means?
Yes. Well, that's the axis. That's what this scale measures. Mm-hmm. Each scale has 7 steps and has an axis, meaning in this case, it goes from total cause to total effect. Now, notice that the total cause is above level 1 and the total effect is below level 7. So these are absolutes which are unattainable for a human being. So the scale is actually within that causality and effect paradigm. Okay. In other words, you can't get to total cause if you're a human being. You can get close.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a very broad scale.
Yeah.
Meaning you go all the way from infinity, which some people think of as God, all the way down to an inanimate object, a thing. So this is how the person thinks of himself.
Right.
There are people, I'm sure you're not one of them, and I'm sure most of your viewers are not going to be at this level, but there are people who think, or you could even say spiritual beings who think they are an inanimate object. If you've ever heard of devic entities,
no,
devic entities are something from Hinduism. They're spirits.
Right.
Excuse me. They're spirits who you will find in nature.
Yeah.
Some of them are so far down scale that they think they are rocks.
Really?
Or
so they're actually
yes.
So they're alive or an entity, but they actually they're actually a physical thing as opposed to an interacting being. Is that correct? Am I understanding correctly?
That's right. That's right. There are beings who are so far down scale that they think they are a thing, an inanimate object. Now, most people don't have much reality on this because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that there are people who deny the existence of anything spiritual. There are people with graduate degrees even who say there is no spiritual reality, and they're just not going to understand this scale.
Well, and there's people who believe the world is flat too. So.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Those people who deny the existence of any spiritual reality would either be at level 5 or level 6. I don't know if there are any humans at level 7. Perhaps a catatonic schizophrenic might be in that state.
Yeah.
So this is somebody who sits in an insane asylum and just doesn't respond at all.
Yeah. Needs to be moved around, sort of thing, as like you say, as a rock. They yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess they probably interpret if they're being fed, I would imagine, that they take that as, taking in energy, part of being a rock that does that. I'm sure there's some sort of energy that rock takes in. I've never been a rock, so I don't know. It's an interesting thought, though.
Yeah, but it's not a new idea. It's an ancient concept that there are beings around. You can find them if you look for them. If you have your telepathy is up to it, you can find a being who's just being a grain of sand. I mean, that's what he's being.
Yeah.
I mean, spiritual beings can be anything, and because they can be anything, this is a very broad scale. So up from 7 is 6, which is an animate object, meaning an animal. There are probably billions of people who think they are an animal. I think it was Plato who said, humans are animals who can talk.
Okay, yeah.
So these people who deny the existence of a spirit, say there is no spirit, there is no afterlife, they think they're animals, just like a horse or a cow, they're a Homo sapiens animal. So up from that is a person more like the type of person that you would run into who thinks he is a persona, meaning an identity. He thinks of himself as Joe Smith.
Yeah.
That's a persona. Okay. He has an identity. Now, this identity could be, he may think of himself as a Jew or a Christian. It's an identity.
Yeah.
So that's how he thinks of himself. He does not think of himself as an animal. He thinks of himself as some identity.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, up from that is a spirit, a person who thinks of himself as a spirit. Now, when we talk about a ghost is a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this person knows that there are spirits, and he knows that he's one of them. He's a spirit. So, for
Is it a spirit in a
example,
physical form? Is that because I'm trying to understand the logic of or from myself, for example, if I was to think of myself as a spirit, but I'm physical, so that seems to be a juxtaposition there between how I would do that. From a practical point of view, how
well,
would you explain that?
well, let me give you my default example.
Yep.
The ancient Christians,
Mm-hmm.
right, who were slaughtered for about 300 years by the Romans, thought of themselves as spirits. They knew that they were going to die and go to the afterlife. Okay, so
Okay, yeah.
that's why they would be in the Colosseum, and the Romans would be doing terrible things, to sicking lions on them and stuff like that, or shooting them with arrows, and they didn't particularly care because they were going to die and go to heaven.
So
They
is it
thought of
when you're talking about
themselves as a
spirit,
spirit.
is it the for example, in that Christian example, they believe that they have a soul, and that's what they are, and that they're just a physical form at the moment, and is that the example for what you're saying there?
Right.
Yeah,
All religious people or spiritually aware people have the idea that there is a spiritual being that inhabits the body, and when the body dies, the
yeah,
spirit goes on.
understood.
Most people on earth believe that,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
regardless of what religion they belong to. Even if they belong to no religion, there are people who belong to no religion whatsoever who still understand that they're a spiritual being, and when the body dies, the spirit goes on to something else.
Okay.
And depending on what religious beliefs they have, they think about what's going to happen. Like Hindus and Buddhists think they're probably going to reincarnate, and Christians and Jews think they're going to go to heaven. So, that's kind of irrelevant to the fact that they know they're a spirit. That is how they think of themselves. So if you talk to a rabbi, any rabbi, he's going to believe he's a spirit, and when his body dies, he goes into some afterlife. Okay?
Yep.
So above that is an angel. Now, an angel is a free being. This is a being who, again, if you want to put this in the context of Hinduism, they talk about the wheel of reincarnation, where you die and then you reincarnate. And there's a whole belief system about why that happens, why you do that. But an angel would be a being who is a free being. He's a spirit. He's not in a body.
Right.
Okay, so this would be a being who ethically is superior to humans. That is why he's a free being. So again, the whole idea in Hinduism is that you have a karma, and you're trying to resolve your karma. And when you finally resolve it, then you're free from the cycle of reincarnation, and you can become an angel.
Right.
There's one particular religious context, but of course, Christians believe that there are angels, and many of them believe that someday they may become angels after they die.
Right, yes.
So, and above that is a god. Now, we can think of this in the Greco-Roman context, all the gods they had. We can think of it in the Norse context. There's many different, even in Hinduism, they talk about different gods.
Yeah.
So there are many religions that have gods. Now, of course, the whole point of, if you study the Jewish Bible, meaning what Christians call the Old Testament, they had this revolutionary idea that there's only one God. And what they were talking about was level one.
Right. Okay.
So there are beings who are gods. They think that, in other words, Zeus, Aphrodite, Neptune, okay? these are divine beings and they're gods.
Yeah.
If you talk to Neptune, he says, yes, I am a god. I am beyond an angel. I am a divine being. And above that is infinity. Now, if you look at this in terms of Buddhism, they talk about nirvana. Nirvana means blown out, which is a state of infinity, where you reunite with the totality of divinity.
Right.
Now, the Abrahamic religions think of a god. They have a slightly different system. But there are beings who think of themselves as gods.
Yeah.
And then there is beyond that, there's a step of where you are infinite. You are beyond duality. Now,
that would be a difficult thing to comprehend, wouldn't it? I mean, infinity is a really difficult concept, I think, for us to comprehend with the scarcity that we have.
Well, that depends on where you are on the scale. In general, on any scale, people have a hard time comprehending levels that are far above them or far below them.
Because I would imagine
the
different scales, the different levels within that scale, that doesn't seem, when I'm looking at that, doesn't seem to be linear as well. It seems to be an exponential as you move up. That there's a big leap between what that is. When I'm looking at that, I mean, the difference between a ghost persona and a spirit is a jump, but the differential between a god and infinity would be a much larger jump, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, and you have to realize this is a quantum scale, meaning it is a quantum leap.
Yeah.
You know, you either think of yourself as a spirit or you think of yourself as a persona. So, you know, you can just talk to a person for 5 or 10 minutes and he'll tell you what his level is without realizing he's telling you.
How does a person use this from a practical point in their life? How would you use this scale of spiritual identity?
You use this the same way you use the scale of basic purposes, which is the first scale in the book. In that you find your level, and it's a liberating thing. When you have certainty what level you are at, there is an epiphany. You say, okay, I'm a spirit. I'm not an angel. I'm beyond a persona, but I'm a spirit. You see? That's right in the middle of the scale. So there are billions of people on Earth who think of themselves at level 4. Now, somebody who's down around 6 or 7 is going to have a hard time understanding what level 1 is. Okay, so that is, again, it's where you are on the scale. I mean, if you're at 4, if you think of yourself as a spirit, think of yourself as an angel is not a big leap. You know, so okay, that's my next thing. So also, this helps you in identifying other people. Whom are we dealing with here? So there are people who identify at different levels. This tells you a lot about the person. It explains a lot about the person. For example, the Romans. The Romans were sort of like what we would think of as fascists, like the Nazis. And so this idea that the Christians had, that they were spiritual beings who were going to die and go to heaven, they didn't get it. That's why they tortured them to death. And in order for the Romans to act like that, they must have been at a low level, like 6, thinking of themselves as animals. You see, that's the type of person who would torture someone because he thinks he's a spirit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So again,
okay. So the Romans thought this. So whether they were consciously aware of it or not, they're in that space of the animal, and that's why they could behave in that way. Is that what you're?
Yeah. And again, if you talk to the person, He'll tell you his level.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who say, "Oh yeah, humans are just animals."
And with
Okay? Now, and in a sense, when he says humans are animals, he's projecting his own level onto everybody else.
right, okay. And is it a case where because you mentioned before. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you are in a state of infinity, you would be in a state of total cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
God is total cause.
Mm-hmm.
God is not the effect of anything.
Mm.
But in like Buddhism, they don't really have the idea of God, but they have the idea of infinity, which they call nirvana.
Right. And is it a case of,
So
mentioned with the other scales, a case of the further you are down, it's more difficult to move up? And is it something where
yeah,
you want to move up, or you can be content at whatever level? I would imagine if you're a persona or above, you might be content with that. Is that something you do, or should you be aiming to move to a higher level?
well, first of all, let me say this: the higher someone is on the scale, the more of a sense of contentment he's going to have.
Okay.
People at the bottom of the scale are effect.
Mm.
Okay? When you are an object, you are close to total effect. You can't really do anything. Like somebody comes and picks up the rock and throws it.
Yeah.
You're an effect point. Whereas if you're when you're at the top of the scale, you're a cause point. So, for example, if you read classical literature like the Aeneid or the Iliad, and the gods are characters in these gods have tremendous powers.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of the story that, Odysseus is at sea and Neptune creates terrible waves, So,
cool. Yeah, so in a sense, it's about your own personal contentness with where you are, as in you connected to your purpose in a way that you find. I've forgotten the word that you mentioned because I was trying to. So it's basically you're aware of where you're at and how much you control to a degree, if that's the right word. How much you can cause using that cause. How much you can actually cause your life to be the way you'd like it to be. Is that a way of putting it?
Yeah. The further down the scale you are, the more you are at effect.
Yeah.
So somebody who thinks he's an animate object, meaning an animal, that's the type of person who blames people for things. He feels he can't do anything to influence the government. He has no control over his life,
Right. Yeah.
Sort of like a cow or a horse.
I get it. Yeah.
So,
okay.
As was like, if a person is a spirit, he is thinks of himself as level 4. He's in a fairly liberated state. He realizes, well, go ahead and kill me.
Yeah.
That's fine. Because this body's going to die in a few years anyway, and there's an afterlife.
Okay.
And depending on what religion he belongs to, he'll have a different concept of that, a different belief system connected with that afterlife. But he knows that you can't kill a spirit. That's what a spirit is. It's an indestructible being.
Yeah, understood.
So this, if you can spot somebody on this scale, tells you a lot about the person.
Yeah.
And might want to decide, do you want to deal with this person or not? Let's say you're thinking about dating a certain person, and this person said, you don't believe in spirits, do you? We're just animals. Well, that person just told you he's at level 6. Now, do you really want to associate with that person? If you're at level 6, you do. But if you're at level 4, you probably don't want to.
Yeah.
And if you're at level 4 and you bump into a person who's at level 5, which is very common, you might say to them, here, read this book or do this meditation, and maybe you will get a concept of yourself as a spirit rather than a persona. Like most people in the industrialized world, especially people who have some education, think of themselves as a persona. They don't think of themselves as an animal. But that's not up to the point of thinking of themselves. They're still very concerned about dying. Because, you're Joe Smith, and Joe Smith is, going to die. So they're concerned about that. Whereas people at level 4 are not too concerned about that. Okay. So, for example, I studied with the Society of Jesus for 4 years, okay? And these are people who are all at least level 4. That's why they take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They understand that they're spiritual beings. The body is going to die in another 50 or 60 years, and they'll go to heaven or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of person, and those people have a high level of causality. And the higher you go, the more causality you have.
Right.
So an angel, you realize that an angel has no body. He doesn't. This idea about dying is preposterous to an angel because he's beyond a spiritual being. He's a being he's free.
Yeah.
Okay. He communicates by telepathy.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So it's really
this is
about
very
your level.
important.
Your level of contentment.
It's important finding your level, and then once you know your level, you can try to move up to the next level.
Yeah.
Which would be a tall task, but it can be done. People do it.
Right. Understood. Okay. Is there more to cover on this, or should we move on to the next one?
No, I think we covered it.
Beautiful. Okay. So next slide, if I can make it go. Why is it not going? Oh, there we go.
Okay, the scale of mental deletion. Now, this is something that most people are not really going to understand. Although if I explain it, more people will understand it than they thought they would. In other words, if I explain this to somebody, people will say, "Oh, yeah, now I know what you're talking about." So in order to explain this, I should tell you, as I do in the book, what the mind is.
Right.
The mind is, we're not talking about the brain. The brain is an organ. It's a physical thing. The mind is an electromagnetic field matrix. It's a matrix in which the being stores information. So if you could imagine like a computer that had no matter in it, it was only energy. In other words, it's pure energy.
Yeah.
And when you think you're doing things in this energy field, this is very easy to prove because every time you think a thought, the galvanic skin response on your body changes. If I don't know if you're married enough. Let's say you have this wife, Anne, and you love her. And I say, well, think about Anne, right? There's going to be a particular change in your field as you think of her. And someone who knows how to use a galvanic skin response meter will see that.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So
does that work from the perspective from using it as a practical experience? And I don't know how it all happened, but when I was younger, in my late teens, early 20s, I can't remember exactly, I had this little wart that appeared on my finger, and every now and then I cut it out, and it would grow back. And then one day I was going to bed and I said, in the morning it's going to be gone, never come back again. And when I woke up, it was gone. It was literally gone, never seen it again.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about this skin response, that kind of thing, this deletion in affecting your body?
I mean, you're talking about a particular phenomenon, which is mental healing, which many people know about.
Yeah, that's not this. This is that's a different topic, is it?
Well, yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, cool.
You healed yourself. You healed yourself by the use of your mind.
Yeah.
So So the now
I'm just trying to understand mental deletion. What you're talking.
Yeah, let me get to it. So I told you what the mind is.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the being creates this electronic field.
Mm-hmm.
The being creates it.
Yeah.
Okay. So beings who have no body still have a mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they're talking about in Hinduism when they talk about your karma.
Right.
Okay, your karma is in your mind, and you carry it with you from lifetime to lifetime.
Okay.
Okay, so when they talk about resolving your karma, see, the Hinduism teaches that the whole point, the reason you reincarnate is you're trying to resolve your karma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the whole idea. That's why you're here.
Yep.
You're trying to resolve it. And when you have spiritual practices or therapeutic practices, that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that's done by mental deletion. So think of it have the conscious mind and the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
Now, the conscious mind is the part you are aware of. You're conscious of it.
Yeah.
That's what you use as we're speaking right now when you do arithmetic and such. But then there's the subconscious. Now, the subconscious is where your karma is.
Right.
And in order to resolve it, you have to access it. And once you access it, you can delete bits and pieces of it.
Right.
So this is what happens in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
In very good therapy, in facilitation, there are many practices. Beings do this through meditation and such. I've been doing this most of my life.
Yep.
I sit down every day and meditate and intentionally delete pieces of my subconscious. I know how to find them and I know how to delete them.
Right.
This did not happen overnight. This took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But and there are 7 levels of mental deletion. And the more upscale you are, the more you can, you get into using that level. In other words, for most people, deletion at level 1, 2, 3, 4, that's above their ken. You know, they don't really know what that is, but they can delete things at a lower level.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to a therapist, right? And you say, well, yeah, I had a terrible divorce. And he says, tell me about it, right?
Yeah.
As you tell him, you're kind of re-experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're deleting bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Now, at some point, you might say to the therapist, you know, we don't need to discuss this anymore. I'm over this. Mm-hmm. I'm done with this. So he has deleted that trauma that was associated with his divorce. Mm-hmm. And he did it probably at level 7. Now, above that is recounting, where you have several similar or related instances. Mm-hmm. In other words, you have the idea of a chain of instances. Like, for example, you might say to the guy comes into a therapist and says, you know, I have a lot of trouble with women. That's why I'm here. Mm-hmm. And as he talks, he says, well, you know, now that I think about it, this has been going on for years. Mm-hmm. Well, there was Mary Lou, and there was Betsy, and there was Annabelle, and I had trouble with all. And you see, he's realizing there's a chain there. Mm-hmm. So he's recounting several similar or related instances.
Right, okay.
Separately. He tells you about Gertrude, and then he tells you about Mary Lou, and then he tells you about Betsy. And in his mind, they're all connected. It's sort of a sequence. Yeah. So he tells you about them. So it's not a specific experience. It's what you might call a chain of experiences. Yeah. Okay? That's a somewhat higher level. Mm. And then above that, you have what you might call an automaticity, where a whole bunch of these things go all at once. Yeah. Now, that most people would not really understand that until you have it happen to you. But you're looking at, let's say, times when you felt invalidated. Okay, and all of a sudden you might have like a whole bunch of these instances of being invalidated, and they all get deleted all at once.
Yeah,
it's an automaticity. That's a higher level. Then above that is deleting things by observation. You just look at it. You don't have to recount it. This is what people do in meditation who are very good at it. Okay? They look at this. They look at their relationship with their father, and as they look at it, they're deleting bits and pieces, parts of it that in their subconscious that had an effect on them no longer have an effect on them because they have deleted them from the subconscious. In other words, when it goes from being subconscious to conscious, you have deleted it from the unconscious mind or subconscious mind, and you are now aware of it. And because you're aware of it, it's not in your subconscious anymore. So it's just an incident. Follow me? Like you'll have a person who has something terrible happen to him, and you can talk to him years later, and he'll laugh about it. Oh, yeah, I remember the time I broke my leg. Yeah, I fell off a cliff, and a bone was sticking out. And, it's like a big laugh to him because there's nothing subconscious about it. He has dealt with it. Okay?
Yeah. So when you're talking about the deletion,
at the time when it happened,
I was going to say, when you're talking about the deletion, you're talking about the deletion of the meaning of that, not so much the memory of the event, but actually the meaning of how that might negatively impact you. Is that what you're talking about?
Certainly the negative impact is what's deleted. But you have to realize that when you have something in your subconscious, you can't see it. That's why it's subconscious. When you can see it, in other words, you're talking to this guy about some incident, right? He was in a car wreck. Yeah. And he'll say, oh, yeah, now I remember what happened. Yeah, now I can remember that a dog ran across, and I had forgotten all about that. I tried to swerve. And so as the person is deleting it, he's remembering things. So it's the deletion helps you to remember. The deletion and the remembering sort of come and go together.
Yeah.
In other words, the reason why something bothers you is not the part of it that you know about, it's the part of it you don't know about.
Yeah.
So this is a datum that I used in my counseling practice, which is that the person never knows what's wrong with him. Often he thinks he knows what's wrong with him. But when he finds what's really wrong with him, it's not wrong with him anymore.
Yeah.
You see? So a guy's having trouble with his wife, right? And he gets in some facilitation and he says, I just realized my trouble with my wife comes from my bad relationship with my mother. There's a connect. See? He's remembering. So when you get to level 4, you can delete it by just looking at it. Yeah. You look at it and it goes poof. Now, above that is enumeration. Now, this is a person who can delete things by counting how many times it happened.
Yeah.
So let's say a guy says, okay, yeah, I'm upset. Well, tell me about it. Well, my dog bit me, and okay, so how many of these incidents do you have? And he'll say 27. And a whole bunch of them goes poof all at once. That's deleting by enumeration.
Right. Okay.
Again, this is an advanced skill that most people do not have. In fact, most people can't even really understand this. But above that is deleting by locating it. A guy is meditating and he says, I wonder what it is that makes me not like Fred. And he just looks, he locates what that thing is, and it's gone, poof. And then whatever when he probably had with Fred, just gone now. That thing is gone. Because it deleted merely by him locating it, whatever it was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Then above that is deleting by will.
Mm-hmm.
You make it go away by intention.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you decide about it. A guy that says, I am no longer going to be afraid of dogs. And that's it. He's no longer afraid of dogs.
Mm. Is it difficult to move from one level to the other in this scenario?
Well, notice this is a gradual scale. And as you practice it, as you do these things, you move up. So my clients would come in. Generally, they would start at level 7. And as I would work with them, they little by little would work their way up this scale.
Mm.
You know? So I'm working with a guy, and 2 months goes by, and he says, I just had a whole bunch of these incidents of cats meowing and cats bothering me and cats scratching me, and they all went poof. So that was an automaticity, see? He wouldn't get that probably the first day.
Yeah. Okay.
And then if he keeps going, he'll get to a point where he can delete something simply by observing it. He just looks at it. Oh yeah, I see, poof. So obviously, as you may have guessed, as you proceed up the scale, the deletion is faster and faster.
Mm. And so this is a personal growth thing where you actually can learning and adjusting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
it's finding things that no longer serve you and being able to delete them from your thought process.
Right.
You described how the mind works. Is that it's like taking that electrical circuit and getting rid of it, screwing up, gone.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. And this is what the Hindus talk about in resolving your karma.
Mm.
Let's say you have a guy, he comes into a therapist, he hates women. Okay. Yeah. Obviously that's something in his karma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he's going to have to look at that. You could start by re-experiencing an incident. Oh, I had a big fight with Mary Lou. You see?
Mm.
So he may be able to re-experience that one incident.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll move up to a point where he's recounting several similar incidents.
Yeah.
You see? Oh, yeah, he'll say, well, yeah, but that was just like the time when I broke up with Betty Lou.
Mm-hmm.
You see? He's finding these several similar incidents. They're related somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's recounting rather than re-experiencing.
Yeah. Okay.
But everybody enters this at level 7. And as he progresses, he moves up.
Yeah. And it's your ability to then remove items. And it's a personal growth where you're able to remove mental pathways that are no longer serving you, so that you can actually, the further you move up, the quicker you can actually do that, and your learning speed increases.
Right. Essentially, you have to understand that the subconscious consists of traumatic events.
Yeah.
So you have many traumatic events that you don't remember, and they're all in your subconscious.
Mm. So
let's say you have a guy who says, I'm remembering this incident from the Middle Ages where I was beheaded. See, he's recounting an earlier incident.
Mm.
And by recounting that, his headache goes away.
Yeah, okay.
That's recounting.
Yeah.
Is related. And then at some point, he might find an automaticity where, he says he's running, difficulties with girls, and all of a sudden it goes, brrr, and the whole thing just goes away.
Mm.
So obviously he's going to be very happy with that. Yeah. And as you go up the scale, it gets easier and easier and easier to do this.
Yeah.
So people who are more upscale, it corresponds to where he is in this ability.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
So this is what therapy is about, and what any type of facilitation is about. You're basically dealing with traumatic events and deleting them from the subconscious mind. And as you delete them from the subconscious mind, they enter the conscious mind. And when you are fully aware of it, it doesn't bother you.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Scale of mental deletion, very important. Should we move on to the next slide?
Yes. Yes.
So, all right. Do you want to take this?
Okay.
Scale of aberration.
This is a totally psychological scale. First of all, you have to realize it's quantum, meaning there's no intervening step.
Yep.
Now, everybody enters this at level 1.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, when a person, the beginning of aberration is.
Can you explain what you mean by aberration? I'm not.
Yeah, aberration, it literally means wandering from.
Okay, yeah.
So as a person leaves his true self, he goes down this scale. So
okay.
Let's say you have a guy, right? He's a normal, happy kid, right? And then he gets involved with drugs, okay? And then he starts stealing things. That's a misdeed, so he can buy the drugs. But then it becomes a secret. He's keeping it secret that he stole things. Then it becomes level 4 suspicion. He's worried about whether anybody knows he did this or not.
Yeah.
Which is a separate level of aberration. And then below that, he will become upset, or as we say, colloquially, mad. And then below that, he will rationalize it, meaning he justifies it. And below that, he will go into an identity, an aberrational identity. So when you find somebody who has a persona like, for example, a Nazi, right? He's down at level 7. He's got this identity. It's an evil identity. It's a destructive identity. And he got there by going down this scale.
Right.
So nobody is born a Nazi. You have to go down this scale to get down to this. Or let's say a guy has an identity as a serial murderer, right? Like Jack the Ripper. Guy goes around at nighttime with a knife and he kills women, okay? That's an identity. That's, notice the axis. That's as irrational as you can get, okay? Yeah. When a person has one of these crazy identities, like, for example, an anti-Semite, okay? That's an identity. It's irrational. And he got there by descending the scale. And so the beauty of this is, as a therapist or as a facilitator or a counselor, you can work the person back up this scale by knowing it. For example, guy comes in, he has an identity as a woman hater. Says, yeah, I hate all women. I'm a woman hater, right? That's level 7.
Yeah.
So you can get him to say, well, do you have any rationalizations or justifications connected with this? He'll say, oh, yeah. And he'll give you his justification. You can't trust women. Women are sneaky. You see? So you got him up to level 6. Then you can say, well, did you have some big upsets at that guy with this? Oh, yeah, he'll have big upsets. You see? Well, there was the time that Mary Lou dumped me, and then there was the time that I got in a big fight with my sister, you know? And then you can say, well, prior to that, were you worried that somebody might find out something about you, and you will find something? Yeah, I was going around worrying that people knew that I really didn't like women.
Mm.
You know, I was always suspecting that they might know this. You see, this guy's worried about this because it's a degraded state. Then you can go up and say, well, what secrets did you have that you were worried they might find out about?
Mm-hmm.
And he'll say, well, there was the time that I beat up my girlfriend.
Mm.
You see, he's keeping that a secret. He's restraining it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, beating up the girlfriend, that's the misdeed. That's level 2.
Mm.
And then you can say, well, did you have some misconception prior to that?
Yeah.
And he'll come up with something like, well, I had the misconception that it's okay for a guy to beat up his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
That's a misconception.
Yeah.
So people will go, not everybody goes down all the way, but this is a sequence that you will find.
Yeah.
So if I find somebody who's upset, I know he's worried that somebody's going to find out something about him, which is level 4,
Mm-hmm.
which means he must have some secret that he's restraining. And that secret is a misdeed of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be doing or not doing.
Mm.
Let's say you're driving your car, right? And you hit somebody with your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hit and run, you keep going, right? So you didn't mean to hit the guy, but you fled. So you should have gotten out and helped the guy. You should have called an ambulance, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, the misdeed is not something you did, it's something you didn't do. And most people have tons of these, I should have taken my son to the park and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's a misdeed.
Yeah.
And the reason the reason you do a misdeed is because you have a misconception. There's always a prior misconception.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I go through several examples of this in the chapter, but this is really useful in knowing what you're looking at with somebody.
Yeah. Is it so from that? So we're going from irrational, and you'd say never fully irrational, never fully rational, because they're outside the scale. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And this is a very specific scale. So you can do this many times on the same person.
And
so when I was counseling people, I was cognizant of the scale all the time.
Yeah.
100% of the time. And whatever we were counseling, the guy would manifest one of these levels. And I would know to move him to the previous level and to handle that. And then to move him to the next highest level and to handle that.
Mm.
And at the bottom of it is there's always a misconception.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything more to that? That's really interesting.
And so what this tells you is people are basically good. And the reason they do bad things is because they have some misunderstanding.
Yeah, I like that.
Like you have some little kid who's raised by Islamic terrorists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's taught that anyone who's not a Muslim is evil. You see? That's a misconception. So that person is then going to commit transgressions based on that misunderstanding. He meets some kid in school who's a Christian, he beats him up. Then he doesn't want to get kicked out of the school, so he keeps it a secret, level 3. Now he's worried who knows and who doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then after that, he'll get upset. So this tells you when you find somebody who's upset, he's at level 5. He's got a suspicion, a regret, a misdeed, and a misconception underlying this upset. This really helps because I bump into people, who will be mad at me, right? I have no idea why they're mad at me. I didn't do anything to them. That's not about me. It's about them. I may have inadvertently inadvertently gave this guy the belief that I knew about something about him.
Yeah.
He's worried that I'm going to find out that he's a drug dealer. You see? Well, of course, he keeps that a secret, which is level 3, and the misdeed is dealing the drugs and he must have some misconception or he wouldn't do it. He must have the misconception that, oh, it's okay to do drugs.
Yeah.
Or drugs don't really do any harm. Or I'm not responsible for other people. You know, these are all possible misconceptions that would lead somebody to then be a drug dealer, which is level 2, and then he keeps it a secret at level 3, and then he's worried. So when you find these people, when you find somebody who's at level 4, he has a distinct look about him. You know, his eyes get big and he's nervous. He's worried that you're going to find out something.
Yeah.
And then he go into getting upset at you. Okay. Because of that.
So it's really a scale where you're looking at to understand what it is that, if you're using it for yourself, it's understanding if I'm upset with something or there's something bothering me, what is my misunderstanding in this situation?
Well, I've used this on myself thousands of times. You know, like if I find myself upset with somebody, I immediately say, you know, what did he nearly find out about me? You know? And I might not have been aware of that. And then underneath that is a secret. There's some secret you're keeping. Or you wouldn't have cared that they found out. Yeah. You see, like if you have somebody who's openly gay, right? There's a lot of people now who are openly gay. They don't care if you know they're gay. They tell you they're gay. Okay? It's not a secret. So they're not restraining themselves. Yeah. So there's no suspicion about whether or not you know. And so they're not going to get mad at you. Whereas the guy who is keeping it a secret, then he's worried if you're going to find out. And then eventually he would get mad at you because that's how the scale works.
Right. Understood. Okay.
So I've used this to help myself all the time over the years, and I use it to understand other people. Yeah,
it seems like a very good scale to understand where upsetness comes from. I know upset's on the scale, but when you're feeling well, you might not be misunderstanding, but when you have a tension within your body as to where that, you can use that to help yourself understand where that might be coming from an external perspective.
And you have to understand the reality that most people have chronic suspicions. Let's say you have a guy who does drugs, right? He's keeping that a secret. He doesn't want to go to jail. He doesn't want people to know. He might lose his job. So he's keeping this a secret all the time, right? So every person he meets, he's worried if they're going to find out about this. This is the type of guy who will get upset easily because all of that stress under there takes a toll. Yeah. So when I get somebody who gets upset with me for no reason, I know that I touched on some secret that he's worried I'm going to find out about. Yeah. This happens inadvertently.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. That's the scale of aberration. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes. Yes.
Scale of physical fitness. I think most people can relate to this.
Yes. So the thing about this that you have to understand is it's broad and it includes all humans. Yeah. So when you have somebody at level 7 who's dying, right, he's succumbing. Now, again, look at the axis. This is an axis of infinite survival potential, which is above level 1, to 0 survival potential, which is below level 7. Yeah. And it's another way of saying total immunity at the top and no immunity at the bottom. You know, there are people, the first germ that comes by, they get sick because they have no immunity. Whereas a person who's further up the scale, like a healthy person is at level 4, He could be around sick people. He doesn't get sick.
Okay.
So this tells you a lot about a person's physical fitness. I've worked as a holistic health practitioner, and I use the scale continuously. You observe the person, or you can just talk to the person. Person will tell you. You say, okay, why are you here? What's the problem? The guy will say, my get up and go got up and went. I just have no energy. Yeah. This guy's at level 5.
Yeah.
So that's different from being sick. It's a higher level. Now, another thing that's really useful is about using this on yourself to see, where am I? Like, you're going along, right? You're a normal, healthy person, and all of a sudden you're feeling weak. You went down to level 5. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
You need to get very busy and fix that, because if you don't, you're going to go to level 6 and get sick.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a level of dysfunction.
Yep.
Yeah. And looking at level 1 superhuman, so this would be people like Hercules or Methuselah. Methuselah is in the Bible. He's said to have lived 900 years.
Yeah.
That would be somebody who's at level 1. Or Samson.
Yeah.
Who I think it says in the Bible, he slew 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. So that's obviously someone who's indestructible.
Yeah.
Obviously, there aren't too many of those people around. It's a very, very upscale. We live in a toxic society. So about as high as anybody's going to get in human society is 2, athletic. So if you look at somebody like, some star athlete like Aaron Judge, who was just voted the most valuable player in the American League and consequently signed a contract for $360 million, if you just look at him, man, is he athletic. This guy's 6'7.5", 282 pounds. He looks like Superman.
Yeah.
So that's athletic. And below that is the person who's just strong. He's energetic and strong. So, your average 18-year-old who has, hasn't been run over by a car or anything, he's probably at level 3. He's energetic.
Yeah.
Teenagers have a lot of energy. They're strong.
Yeah.
Which is why that's who they draft into the military. Young men.
And so really the purpose of this scale is to identify where you're at on that, and then you can look at what you can do to move within that scale, preferably up.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So
it's really a scale of identification, not specifically saying what you need to do to move up, but it's just identifying where you are within that.
Yes, but the whole point of all of these scales is to find what level you're at. And once you know where you're at, meaning you have correctly identified it, then you can move up to the next level. Yeah. So if I have a person who's sick, right, he's throwing up and things like that, right? And I work with him, that stops, and he comes in one day and he says, I don't really feel sick, but boy, am I weak. I'm happy. He went from 6 to 5.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to treat this person as an unhealthy person. He's weak. I'm not going to tell him to go out and lift weights and run 5 miles. Okay? You have to treat him gently and get him up to being normal.
Yeah.
So when he comes in one day and he says, I feel all right. I'm not weak anymore. That weakness, I don't know what there was, it went away. He's now at 4. Now you can say to him, great, let's get you on a program of running distance, lifting weights, swimming laps, right? And as a result of that, you move him up to 3. He gets strong. You see? Yeah. So I've worked with athletes. I've worked with couch potatoes. And, as you get old, you tend to go down this scale little by little. You don't have too many 75-year-old guys who are strong and energetic. Very few.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I think Jack LaLanne fitted into that category. Where he had a lifetime of exercise and fitness. And when he was 75, he was so strong and energetic.
Yeah.
He was like the original health guru on TV in the 50s.
Yeah.
So this is very useful.
Definitely. All right. So that's the scale of fitness. Shall we move on to the next one?
By the way, I want to say, if you're going to get somebody to be on your team, you're going to hire somebody, or you're going to go into business with somebody, or even you're going to have a relationship with somebody, use this scale. If this person is at these lower levels, it's not a good idea to get hooked up with this person. If you hire somebody who is sick, he's going to miss days. He's going to not show up. You see? So you can use this to your advantage.
Yeah, understood.
Whereas if you have a guy, you say to the guy, tell me, do you work out? Oh, yeah, I have a gym membership. I get up every morning at 6 o'clock and go to the gym. This guy is probably at 3.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a good guy to get on your team.
Yeah.
He's not going to have health problems.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a practical application. Okay. So the scale of fitness. Should we move on to the scale of justification?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is really important, dealing with people, how they justify things. Now, of course, justification is ubiquitous amongst humans. Notice this is a quantum scale, meaning there is no intervening state. You're either at level 4 or at level 3. There's no such a thing as being in between the two.
Right. Okay.
So the way a person justifies will change by a quantum leap. Now, notice level 4 is the dividing line between a responsible person and an irresponsible person.
Yep. And the scales
and
total cost.
The axis.
Yep.
Right. So a person who has no need for justification, this is a person who's truthful. He just tells you whatever it is. Okay? He doesn't need to justify things. And this person is at a very high level of causality. This is a person you want on your team.
Yeah.
And look at the bottom. Again, this is a spiral scale. So there is an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7. So level 1 and level 7 are both no justification. But at 7, it's no attempt at justification. And at level 1, it's no need for justification.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yes.
A person at level 7 is in despair. He doesn't even attempt to justify. He's just in despair. Okay? Now, up from that is a person who justifies by a computation. He has figured something out. He has a fixed idea. Like a guy, you notice the guy, you never see him with girls, right? So you say, well, don't you go out with girls? He'll say, I can't trust women. They're all bad. See, those are fixed ideas. Those are computations that he has calculated in his mind to justify his irresponsibility toward women. I know a person who actually said to me more than once, all men are beasts. Okay? I'm quoting the person. That is a fixed idea. That person is, if you say to somebody, well, why did you break up with Joe? The person will say, because all men are beasts. It's just some sort of something that the person is like computed in his mind that is now a fixed idea that he carries around with him. Okay? That is a very low level of justification. Above that is just justifying by reason.
Yeah.
People will do it by logic.
Right.
And of course, this is specious reasoning. It's not legitimate logic.
Mm-hmm.
So a person will justify something by saying, he'll give you some calculation. It's not a fixed idea.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of reasoning it. You know, like a lawyer will do this for his client.
Yeah.
You know, the client is being tried for armed robbery.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer will say something like, well, you have to expect that somebody who grew up poor is going to do something like this. See, it's a kind of logic, but it's an irresponsible logic.
Yeah.
Now, above that is justifying by physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
This guy will actually have a thing. Like you say to the guy, why do you get up at 6 o'clock? He says, because that's when the sun comes up. It wakes me up.
Mm.
See, that's objective reality.
Yeah.
There's no logic in there. There's no fixed idea. Okay? It's just physical. You know?
Mm.
Well, how come you don't eat sugar? Well, sugar is not helpful for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for your metabolism. It's objective, you see? It's an objective reality.
Yeah.
So he will just point to something that's real.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you eat bread? Well, bread has gluten, and gluten is not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's an objective reality.
Mm-hmm.
So he's justifying it. He's justifying it by an objective reality. This is a person gives you a good reason for something.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like right on the edge between, this is the beginning of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So above that is by acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
The person justifies something by acceptance, meaning he just views it. He sees it for what it is, and he accepts it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a person who would say, well, you know, why are you sending money to this political party? Well, you know, I see that they need help. I can view this, that they're trying to do things that I think are good, and so I accept that. And so he's giving you something he accepts.
Yeah.
That's a responsible type of justification.
Yeah.
Now, above that is by responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The person just accepts responsibility.
Mm.
So, you know, well, why didn't you yell at your son when he spilt the milk on the rug?
Mm.
Well, I forgive him. I assume responsibility for him. He's my son. I'm not mad at him. I forgive him. See, that's a very high level of justification. He's giving you a justification, but the justification is, I love my son.
Yeah.
And then above that is, no justification is needed. This is a person who abides with truth. He doesn't justify anything. You know, you'll hear people will give you gratuitous justifications.
Yeah.
Like somebody, you know, like, for example, I used to be an athlete and what some people would call a health nut. Okay? Used to be called a health nut. So people would, you know, look at my physique and they would start giving me all these justifications why they don't work out. See? And I wasn't justifying anything. I was just saying, okay, fine.
Yeah. And that,
So
I mean,
if you're at the top of the top, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, if you, from that perspective, as you say, from that example, you weren't justifying why you're doing it. You were doing it because it was right for you. And you didn't need to justify it because it was your truth.
Even justifying it that it's right for me is a justification.
Exactly.
No justification is you don't even do that.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't have to justify it. It's your truth. You were doing it, and that was it. You don't need to explain it. It's right for you.
That's right.
You're just doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, right. This is a guy. He's
It's kind of
he's
like
a
being in the
truthful
zone.
person.
Yeah, you're being truthful
What?
to you. You're in your own zone, and you're comfortable with that. And you don't, not even to
Right.
yourself, you don't even need to justify it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a very liberated state to be in.
Yeah, no, I relate to that. it's
Yeah.
I facetiously joke that because I'm Catholic upbringing, that I used to be Catholic, but I can't because I don't feel guilt, and part of that is not having to justify what I do. I'm comfortable with it, and that's all it needs to be.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, this is the type of guy who he's not really concerned about what people think.
Mm,
He doesn't have to convince them of anything.
mm.
It doesn't matter whether he's a conservative or a liberal. He's not justifying it to anybody.
Yeah, it's
You know,
extremely liberating.
he has a certain right. He has a certain truth. He lives with that truth, and he doesn't. Usually, he doesn't say anything about it. That's
Mm.
why it's not justified.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I understand. That's a great
So
skill.
that person is a very causative person
Yeah.
in that area. Notice it's a specific scale.
Yeah.
When you come to another area, it might be different. So you might have a guy who, he's a wonderful family man.
Mm.
I don't know if you know this, but people in the mafia are famous for being very good family people.
Yeah, no, I've
They're
heard that.
kind to their wives and children,
Mm.
they're very good family people. But in another area, like they're out and they're, stealing a truck full of stoves or something that they're going to sell to a fence, well,
Mm.
that's obviously a much lower level. So it's
Mm.
a different area of the
Yes,
person's life.
correct.
And this is the norm. You find people who, there are one area of uh, justification in one area and another area, and they have a different level.
Mm. So that's very specific scale. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So that's a scale
And,
of.
and this tells you whether or not you want this person around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Understanding where
know,
they might be
if a,
just.
per, if a person, you say to a guy, look, you're just sitting in your house, you're not looking for a job,
Mm.
you're not doing anything. What are you doing, right? And he says, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about me. I can't get a job. And this guy's at level 7. He's in despair. He's
Mm.
not justifying it.
Yeah.
You don't want to deal with that person.
Yeah.
You don't want
Understand.
that person on your team.
Yeah.
And as you go up the scale, the person is less effect and more cause.
Yeah.
So the people you want are the people near the top.
Yes, definitely.
That's who you want around you.
Yeah. Understood. Okay, so that's a scale of justification. We move on to
Right.
the scale of belief.
Right. Yeah. Now everyone enters this scale at 4.
Mm-hmm.
When you come into, notice it's a specific scale, you come into a particular frame of reference,
Mm-hmm.
you come in neutral. Like when I was a sophomore in college, I sat next to a girl who, we were friendly. It turned out she was a Buddhist. I wasn't. So she said, well, why don't you come to a prayer meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right. What have I got to lose? They're not charging me any money. So she took me to a Buddhist prayer meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at that point, I sort of had to either go up or down.
Yeah.
You see?
Mm.
I either was, well, do I believe this or do I not believe it?
Yeah.
You see? So
I think, and we
I'll
probably
tell
need
you
to
when
highlight that this is a specific scale as well, so it applies to specific. It's not a general. It applies to. So it might be a belief, might be say a God belief, or it might be a belief in gravity. That it applies.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Just to clarify.
I know a guy who was a what you might call an avid baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a lot of belief in baseball. He was probably too, great faith, the national pastime of America, Well, this guy, as years went by, he went down and he became very cynical about baseball. These guys they make too much money, and he just stopped watching completely. He lost his belief in baseball.
Right.
He had no faith. He got to a point where he didn't want to hear about it. Now, there are people who will tend to get into a chronic level. Right. There are people who have no faith. Mm-hmm. So you tell this person something, and all you get from this person is disbelief. Mm. Like, for example, you'll say to this person, well, the speed of light is about 186,000 miles per second. And they'll say, no. They disbelieve it.
Yeah.
Or if you tell somebody, for example, it wasn't really Pontius Pilate who wanted to crucify Jesus. It was really the Jewish elites that pressured him into it. And he went along with it because he didn't want to have a riot. And they'll say, no, that's not true. They just disbelieve it. It's like there's no discussion. They won't say, well, I'm going to look this up in the Bible, and see what it says, because they're just at no faith. They have no faith in what you're saying.
Yeah.
These people have no trust or control, which is the bottom of the scale, right? On the right, when you look at the axis, people at the top have complete trust and control. At the bottom, there's no trust. And again, those are absolutes, they're unattainable. But the people who can control things and don't trust anybody, those are people who disbelieve.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can tell them something that's absolutely the truth. And they will just say, they'll just dismiss it because they don't trust you.
Yeah.
So, as a person goes down from neutrality, he'll go into skepticism, which is very little faith. And then he'll go down and go to cynicism, which is very little faith. And then he'll go down to belief, which is no faith.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who says, there's no God, there's no afterlife, there are no spirits, he has no faith in any of it. He doesn't trust anybody. And what he doesn't realize is this is because he has a problem with control. He can't control those things.
So you start at neutrality at level 4 because you have no knowledge of it. And once you have a reference, you can decide whether you believe or don't believe. Is that?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So when you go up from neutrality, you go into ingenuousness.
Yes.
Okay. Which is like, a person has faith. He has some faith in it, So, when you see people who, like from the country, are known for being ingenuous, they haven't been beaten down to cynicism.
Yeah.
Because they live in the country, there are no con men around, So they have faith. If you tell them something, they'll accept it. They're ingenuous.
Yeah.
And then you could go up to confidence, which is where you have great faith. Like a person who's really can control something. Let's say you have somebody like Yogi Berra is a good example. Somebody once asked him, he was the most valuable player 3 times. He was the dominant player of his day.
Yeah.
Probably the best hitting catcher, certainly of his day. And when somebody once asked him, well, what do you do when you go into a slump? He said, I never thought I was in a slump. I always figured I'd get a hit the next time up. That's confidence. See, he could control that bat. Yeah. You didn't even have to throw him a strike. You could throw him a ball that was at his chin, and he would still hit the ball.
Yeah.
So this is what you find in people who have control.
So the purpose
there's a lot of rest there.
Yeah. So this isn't you're becoming in relation to a specific area. This scale gives you that awareness of where you are, so that you can move yourself if you need to get to whatever objectives you might have. Because if you're not aware where you are, it's difficult to move. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, this tells you, if you have a guy who's cynical about something,
mm-hmm.
you're not going to get him to believe it.
Yeah.
You see, he has very little faith. You may be able to bring him up to skepticism. You see, he's not cynical about it anymore, but he's just kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
You see? And then you could bring him up to where he's like neutral. He's impartial.
Yeah.
So this is a really good way to deal with people. Let's say you're trying to talk to somebody, you have a political discussion, you want to tell him that the party that you belong to is a good party, and he's very cynical about it. So you may be able to talk to him and have some success, bring him up to skepticism. He's not going to just go up to neutrality. You see? He would have to work his way up this.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this scale is, before I discovered the scale, it was not clear to me that belief was better than disbelief. But I came to realize it because, if you listen to people who are very positive, they have belief. Like Jesus said, if you have faith and you tell the mountain to move, the mountain will move. Okay? That's belief.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. So it's really, and from that perspective too, I guess in a practical sense, if you're aware of where you are, you can actually just switch if you wanted to, and say, okay, I'm going to, confidence is a good example. A lot of people, think confidence is a thing, but it's a behavior, it's a thought process, and you don't have to have experience. You can just be confident and walk into a situation and stand tall and address that well. That's different from experience. But the feeling of confidence is go in there and go, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability and feel confident about your current level of experience is what I'm talking about.
Well, remember, everybody enters the scale at level 4 in the relevant area and then works his way up or works his way down.
Yeah. No, I like that. Scale of belief. Cool. Okay. Next one, scale of inanimate, if I can say it. I'll let you say it.
Equanimity.
Equanimity.
Yes. So this is a very important scale.
Do you want to explain
95%. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you want to explain what the actual, what you mean by equanimity for?
Yeah, well, equanimity is a state of mind where you are calm, you're not disturbed. So a person who has complete self-control, security, and emotional stability is an equanimitous person.
Yeah.
See, that's the top of the axis.
Cool. Now I don't have to look.
And again, yeah. So, it's sort of like an extreme state of level-headedness.
Yep.
This person is not going to get upset easily because he's equanimitous.
Understood. Yeah.
See, a person who is insecure lacks self-control and does not have emotional stability. So a person at the top of the scale has self-control, he's secure, he's not insecure, and he has emotional stability. So this person is not going to get upset easily.
Yeah.
So, there's a type of guy, you'll accidentally bump into him, and he's ready to have a fist fight with you.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a person who's low on the scale. Whereas a person who's equanimitous, you bump into him, and he says, oh, excuse me. He's apologizing even though you're the one who bumped into him.
Yeah.
Okay? He's secure, he's emotionally stable, he's not going to get upset about this little thing. So obviously, you want to be at the top of the scale. Now, people have, generally, when a person is born, he's at 7, he's infantile. And what that means is he's disoriented.
Yeah.
The trouble with a kid is he's disoriented. A little kid is disoriented. He doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So as he gets oriented, he comes up to brattiness, like a person who's spoiled. You know, like there are women who are spoiled, especially beautiful women. Guys will give them anything. You know, they will do anything to get these girls to go out with them. So they're spoiled. And because they're spoiled, they're bratty.
Yeah.
So they act like children. Or like somebody who, the prince, you know, of some kingdom, or even the king himself. Yeah, he's spoiled, so he's bratty. Then you move up to what I call childishness. This is a person who's immature. You know, person who he kind of misbehaves, and we say, well, he's immature. Yeah. And then you go up to adolescence. See, this is following maturity. I used to think this was a scale of maturity. It's not. The underlying axis is equanimity. Yeah. Because you have sometimes children who are quite adult. You know, they're a pleasure to be around. Yeah. They say thank you, please, you know. They don't speak when you're speaking. They're very adult. Even though if the kid's only 4 years old, there are kids like that. Yeah. So adolescence is a state of rebelliousness. Person comes up, he stops being immature, but now he's rebellious. Yeah. Then adolescence goes up to adultness. This is a person who's like an adult. He acts like a grown-up. Yeah. And then you go up to maturity, which is a state of completeness, where you feel complete. You're a whole person. No. And then above that is wisdom, which is a state of calmness. Yeah. There's no wisdom if there's no calmness. Right. Okay. Yep. So it's about finding where you are on that level, and then going, okay, how do I do that? Because obviously having a bit more control and securing yourself and emotional stability is going to make it easier for you to deal with things. So again, it's awareness, right, aware of where you're at, and your ability to address the situation in a calm and controlled manner. Right, and also other people. Yeah, you know, and people you're dealing with as well. Yeah. You know, like I'll see some person, you know, like some very pretty girl who always gets her way with men, always. You know, the guy says, let's go dancing. She says, no, I don't want to go dancing. You know, and he says, okay, she's spoiled. So she's bratty. She's like a brat. Yeah. So, you know, this happens more with pretty women. Now, women who are less attractive are less that way because they're not spoiled. So you have a lot of women who are, you know, adult or mature, who did not have this because they didn't have that control over men by their physical beauty. Because in case you haven't noticed, most men will do anything for a beautiful woman. You know, there seems to be that, you know, that can be there. I don't know if it's 100%, but I haven't got the experience to say whether that's correct or not. But there is a perception that is correct. Yeah, definitely. So, but it's really from the scale perspective. It is about working out where you are on that scale, or where the person you're dealing with, so that you know how to address that situation. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like if I see somebody who's rebellious, right? He's acting like a teenager. He's at level 4, adolescence. I'm going to try to move him up to adultness. I might say to him, you know, a more adult way to deal with this would be to have a discussion about it, like your parents might, rather than yelling and screaming and, throwing things.
Yeah. Okay.
But so it depends on what level the person is at, and it tells you how to handle that person.
Yeah.
If a person could be 30 years old and be childish, which is level 5.
Yeah.
So you have to realize what you're dealing with. This is an immature person, regardless of his age. And so if you want to handle him, you got to sort of bring him up, and he's going to come into a type of adolescence where it's not so much that he's immature, but he's rebellious.
Yeah. And it's a general scale, so it's applying to that person as a whole. Generally, that's how they will deal.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Person as a whole.
Awesome.
And this is a really good indicator of whom do you want around you. Do you want somebody around you who's going to throw a tantrum if you just don't want to do what they want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you observe a person and you see that this person has a sense of maturity and completeness, this person seems to have self-control, is secure, is emotionally stable.
Yeah.
So
it's a good observation to make specifically. I mean, because I can see ahead and I can see the next couple of slides, and I think this is it seems to be a foundational point for either your personal understanding of where you're at in your own self-control, security, and emotional stability to deal with certain situations, which I said I've got a sneak peek into what's coming ahead. So I think that relates to that. Is that fair to say, though? It's one for your own senses to be able to understand how you're going to deal with situations and then move yourself preferably up on the scale, and also to be aware of how someone is reacting to things and whether you can move them or not. You might be able to move them, but even if you can't move them, because you're aware of where they're at, you can actually adjust how you deal with that. Because if someone's behaving in a bratty manner, you would deal with that differently to how someone who deals with things in a mature manner.
Right. I'll give you an example. I was at a dance. I guess 17. And a friend of mine says, that girl, she's really rough. She's hard to get along with. She won't even dance with you, even though she's at a dance. I said, I'll ask her to dance. He said, okay. So I went over her to say, would you like to dance? Which is something I did all the time. And the first thing she said to me is, what are you supposed to be? What kind of a comment is that? I mean, that's like a very rebellious type of a thing to say to somebody.
Yeah.
So I don't know if but what that told me was, I don't want to dance with this girl.
Yes. Yeah, and that's that's the point. Yeah, exactly. Because you can understand where they're at, and then you can adjust your behavior to address the situation. Yeah, correct. Right. Love that. That's really great. And because we'll connect it to the next couple of slides, I think, because this is, well, in my opinion, it's related. Correct me if I'm wrong. But shall we move on to the next slide?
Sure.
We've been giving little teasers, because the scale of attack, which I think the scale of equanimity relates to that, and how you address these kind of situations, is my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, first of all, let me explain something that very few people understand. The ability to attack is fundamental to someone's mental state. And I'll give you an example. When I was a little boy, I grew up in a place where the question was not whether you would fight, but whether you would win. You were going to fight.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just how things were. If you went out on the street, you were going to fight.
Yeah.
So, there were a few kids around who were not willing to attack. They got beat up every day just for fun.
Yeah.
So I learned that my willingness to attack was a big deal, because I was usually one of the smaller kids in the class, partially because I was a year younger than everybody else, but also because I just come from a small family. And so I learned that I had to be willing to attack. That's not how I was when I was a little kid. So I had a few times when I picked a fight with somebody, a tough guy, in front of everybody. And I got a reputation as a person who was willing to attack. And like the guy said something in front of a bunch of people. I said, come over here and say that. He came over, he said it, and I hit this guy a shot. He flew across the room. Yeah. But knocked him right down. So everybody saw this. So they know, okay, this guy is willing to attack. Yeah. And the result of that was people left me alone. Yeah. So this is like what they often, Ronald Reagan used to say, peace through strength. Okay? So the United States has by far the best military in the world. Okay? No sane person would attack the United States. Okay? So we are clearly willing to attack. We're willing to attack on land, on sea, and in the air. So that's what this is about. No, so a person at the top of this scale, okay, who either has no need to attack or is willing to attack, that person is courageous. Yeah. That person has courage.
And
that
just to clarify before we move that, because this is a specific scale, so it relates to specific circumstances. In some areas, you might, cool. Yeah. Now, then we go into the middle three. These people are neurotic. Unwilling to attack, must attack, and cannot attack. Those are neurotic people. They are cowardly people. That's why they're neurotic, because they're cowardly. And at the bottom is the psychotics. Okay? Must be attacked, must not be attacked. Those people are suicidal. Psychotic people are suicidal. They're destroying themselves. Yeah. So let's look at number 7. Must not be attacked, right? This person is hysterical. Oh, I must not be attacked. So this person will just not go out. He's hysterical. Yeah. And above that is a person who must be attacked. That person is masochistic. Yeah. Now, again, these make no sense to most people because they're psychotic. Now you get up into what we would call normal people, okay? Cannot attack. This is a fearful person. Okay? That's a type of neurosis. Above that is must attack. That's a belligerent person. That person is going to pick a fight. Yeah. And above that is unwilling to attack. That's a pacifist. Pacifist is unwilling to attack. Seems like for me, and maybe I'm not, it is because I'm not understanding it. It's because you look at those three, if you're flowing from that order, cannot attack, must attack, and then unwilling to attack. It seems to go in a weird order to me. I would have thought must attack would be in a different position, or because it's a linear scale, so you have to move from one to the other. So it's like cannot attack, must attack, unwilling to attack. They're almost in those primal reactions of fight, flight, and flee. Is that where that's coming from? That it appears to be, but I'm not sure about the order as well. Can you explain that why it's in that order?
Okay. So let's take level 5. All right, cannot attack. This person's in fear. This person is in worse state than a person who's belligerent. Right? He cannot attack. So everybody's going to beat him up. Above that is must attack. Now, this is a guy who is belligerent. He must attack. If you say to him, your mother's ugly, he's going to have a fist fight with you. Okay? Yeah. And above that is a person who's unwilling to attack. Okay. Unwilling to attack is different from cannot attack. Okay? Unwilling to attack is someone who he really doesn't want to do it. It's not that he can't do it. It's he's not willing to do it. So a person who's a pacifist is in better state than a person who's belligerent.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so they're aware
But
they
you
can
realize
attack, but they're controlling it and
pacifism
saying, yeah.
is the highest level of cowardice.
Mm. So you've got
Now, a person
the
who's
person who
willing,
can't because they're operating out of fear. Then the next step is it's not control. They're just going to just attack because. But then the pacifism is they're aware that they can, but they won't.
right?
Yeah. Okay. I understand the logic now. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So now above that is willing to attack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a person who's brave.
Yeah.
So
Yes, and then there's a difference between
who,
willing to attack and must attack. So willing to attack, I mean, kind of it goes to the original warrior mentality, or even if you want to quote the Bible, is because you've made that reference before, in the sense of the meek shall inherit the world, whereas people misunderstand that the meek, what the original meaning was, great strength under control. So both of that, and the warrior symbol was always the original warrior symbol was a spear that was broken, meaning that they had the capacity to, but they didn't. And this is where I would say in that category, they're willing, like from your perspective, after the example you gave before, where you were a young guy and you picked a big guy and showed that you were willing to attack. From there, you were still willing to attack, but you didn't need to because it was known that you were willing to attack.
well, no need to attack is above willing to attack.
Yes.
No need to attack is where you want to be.
Yeah.
All right, this is a person who can be a diplomat. He can be a judge. He's objective. He can see both sides. The person who's willing to attack, he doesn't really see both sides.
Yeah.
So, for example, after Pearl Harbor, the next day, millions of American men, literally millions, showed up to join the military. Okay, they were willing to attack.
Yeah.
Okay, so no need to attack would be a person who this is an exalted state. This is the sanest person you'll find. A sane person has no need to attack. A totally sane person. Yes, he's courageous, but he doesn't have a need to attack because he's objective.
Yeah.
This is the person who can look at the conservatives, look at the liberals. He doesn't want to attack either side. He's objective. He can say, okay, these guys advocate this. These guys advocate that. I don't have to attack either one of them. You can be objective.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. And is it a case it's a linear scale, so it goes from one to the other.
Right.
That process.
Right. There are intervening stages. Yes. You go gradually from one to the next.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I misspoke. What that means is there's no overlap between 1 and 7.
Yeah.
It is a quantum scale, which means that you just go from 3 to 2. There's no, you change your mind is basically what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a scale.
All linear means is it's not spiral.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no congruence between level 1 and level 7. Yeah. If you look at level 7 and level 1, they're completely different. There's no apparent congruence there.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So that's the scale of attack. The next scale.
Right. That's very important, and it's something most people don't understand.
Yeah, the lineal and spiral.
Truthfully, there are very few people who are at the top who are truly courageous people. Most people are cowardly.
I think that falls into that. I mean, that no need to, the objectivity, the ability to sit back. And I remember, and I've quoted this before, I think, is that, Nelson Mandela's father, although he was the leader, he would have everyone speak first so that he could understand their perspective, and that would give him that objectivity, which is a courageous thing to do as well, to sit back and listen to what everyone else says before you talk.
Yes. Yeah, it takes courage to just look at all the different views, and not get drawn into it.
Yeah.
That takes more courage than actually fighting.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, coming back to that warrior state. It is, the whole point is to, you've got the ability to, you're courageous, you're strong, but you're objective, and you can sit back and take in and listen to what's going on. Yeah.
Right.
It's a strong place to be. Right. So that's a scale of attack. So the next one is scale of conflict, which I would suggest relates to, by the title, I could be wrong, but the scale of conflict.
No, this is a very different thing. Attack means you're going to go after somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. The scale of conflict is conflict exists. Okay. And how do you deal with it? How do you deal with that conflict?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So it's not really about attacking or not attacking. That's
one way to
thing.
deal with conflict would be to attack, but that's not the only way. Is that, or am I misunderstanding that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So notice this is a spiral scale, which means level 1 is no conflict, and level 7 is no conflict. Yeah. But at level 7, it's no conflict is possible. This person is completely in denial about the thing.
Right. Okay.
This is a person who, there's no problem between the Crips and the Bloods. He's just in denial about it while they're out there killing one another. Then at the top is, it's not no conflict possible. It's no need for conflict. This person can have peace because he has no need for conflict. Okay? So in order to have peace, you must assume complete responsibility. Notice that's lined right up next to it.
Yeah.
It's not above it. Yeah. And at the bottom, if you are in denial, you're assuming no responsibility. So you have to be able to distinguish between a peaceful person and a person who's in denial. A person who's in denial is at effect. The person who is peaceful is at cause.
Yeah. And
you have all these intervening stages. Again, it's a gradual scale, so you can be halfway between 2 and 1. You work this gradually. So this is really important to look at in terms of success, your success. Like, if a person is defeated, okay, he's been dominated. Up from that is a person who's not defeated yet, but he's losing. He's struggling. Then up from that is a stalemate. This is an equilibrium. And above that is winning, which is success.
Yeah.
Above winning is victorious. You're not winning. You have won. Okay? Yeah. You are dominant. And then above that is peace. Where there is no conflict, there's no conflict because you're at peace.
Yes.
So this is, it's not hard to spot people on these different areas. For example, Hitler, who was obviously insane, insisted on pursuing, fighting World War II, long past the point where they had already been defeated. All the generals knew that it was only a matter of days before the Russians took Berlin. Yeah. And yet Hitler kept saying, we need to fight, we need to fight, we need to fight, because he was insane. Okay. So at the time when Germany was defeated, they were dominated. They were dominated by the Allies, right? The Allies came in and cut up the country into 4 sections and cut up Berlin into 4 sections. That's as dominated as you can get.
Yeah.
So this is very, very important in assessing where you are. Where are you in your conflict? So
okay, yeah. So you
can assess. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if there's a conflict, you find yourself in a conflict, then you can assess where you're at within that conflict and how to address it or how to move forward with that.
Right.
Assuming that you have some objectives, that's a presupposition there, that you have some objectives you want to achieve, and how to adjust to that by being aware of where you are. And it seems to be your
Right.
ability to actually move up the scale becomes to be your awareness of how responsible you are in respect of your part within the conflict.
Right.
Mm.
Your level on the scale is a direct result of how much responsibility you assume.
Mm.
You see, the peaceful person is the person who assumes complete responsibility.
Mm.
You see, he's not for one side or the other. This is a person who has no conflict. He's a peaceful person because he assumes complete responsibility.
Yeah, so if you put
like, let's say you have.
I was going
Go
to say, if
ahead.
you put in the context of, if am I interpreting this right, if you put in the context of, just say you're having a discussion with someone and they've got a different point of view to you. Now you can, as a peaceful person, if you take complete responsibility for the conflict there, you could say, well, they've got a different opinion to me. I'm just not going to argue with it. And I'm quoting my mum here. If you can't argue with someone that doesn't want to argue with you. And so if you go, okay, we've got differences of opinion, I'm just not going to talk about it. Then you can't have a conflict because you're taking complete responsibility. And if they want to keep talking about it, you can walk away and there's going to be no conflict and it's going to be peace. You can have differences of opinion.
I can't tell
okay.
you how many people criticize me because I wouldn't argue with them.
But but that's taking complete responsibility that for the conflict, saying, I'm not going to argue. I don't need to argue with you. You're entitled to your opinion.
Right.
And I'm entitled to mine.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
See, that's a person who has a high level of causality.
Mm.
Is it cause rather than effect?
Mm. Yeah.
So, where are you on the scale of cause and effect?
Yeah.
That's what this is measuring.
Yeah.
How causative are you and how much it affects? So, someone who's very bellicose, right, might not understand level one. They're only interested in being victorious. They don't understand there's something beyond victory.
Yeah.
And what's beyond victory is peace.
Yeah. And this is, your level, your level of responsibility, your choice to react, because I've had that. For example, I've done a lot of negotiation and I have my own program on negotiation magic. And one of the things within that is your ability to separate the person from the behavior and be responsible for that. And I've been in many negotiations where the person will start giving personal attacks as a tactic to get you off guard. And if you don't react to that, you just stay focused, it diffuses it completely. And that part of the conflict goes. But if someone says, makes a personal attack, and then you start defending that, all of a sudden that inflames the conflict and you're then becoming reactive rather than having using that causality. You're actually then back in control of going, okay, I'm responsible for how I can react here, and I'm going to react in a way that's going to continue to move in a way that doesn't escalate a conflict or doesn't create a conflict. Because if in that situation, if you're having that negotiation, it might be about a business or an objective. If they're attacking you personally, that's not relevant to the actual outcome. So you just let it go and move forward, and that makes the whole circumstance different. Well, that's my experience anyway. So, yeah, I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, but it is, in this circumstance, I'm going to take responsibility. They've attacked me personally. So what? And to take that from a physical example, there was one time I was with someone, and it was a grumpy old guy, and he was the superintendent, and I was there for the contractor. And I wore a suit it was a big 22-story high construction site, but I always wore a suit, and I was wearing braces at the time, the old 80s style braces. And it was funny, we were talking and he grabbed one of the braces and flicked it. And it was and I didn't react to it at all. I just let it go and didn't create that. And then as we were talking, he goes, I think the braces are really cool. And I wish I had the courage to wear them because they look great. But if I had been taken no responsibility for my own action and just reacted and said, how dare you do that or whatever, it would have escalated into something completely different to where it was. Whereas I took responsibility for my own actions and said, so what?
Right.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's a really good understanding of how to address conflict and understanding where you were at.
Yeah. And you have to understand that a person who's at level 1, 2, or 3 is a very responsible person. And a person who's at 5, 6, or 7 is a very irresponsible person.
Yeah, interesting.
So the way to win is to assume responsibility.
Yeah.
For whatever it is.
Yeah. Love that. So that's the scale of conflict. We got one more in the individual scales.
Okay.
That's the scale of reaction.
Right. Yeah.
So
So I want to comment, first of all, that the difference between a response and a reaction. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So if somebody comes up to me and says, your father's a bum, and I say, oh, yeah, that's a reaction. But if I say, why would you say that? That's a response. A response is volitional. A reaction is not volitional.
Yeah.
So if you step on my toe and I go, ouch,
yeah,
that's a reaction. There's no response there. It's just a reaction. So people who are, what does it mean to react? A person who is least affected by somebody, okay, that's at the top of the scale. A person who is most affected is at the bottom of the scale. And so when you are least affected, you're not reacting as much. But when you are most affected, you're reacting a lot.
Yeah.
So this is the scale of reaction.
Okay.
So there are basically 7 types of reactions. So going from the top, right? Somebody does something, that irritates you, right? It bothers you, okay? That's level 1.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't affect you enough that you even say anything about it. Then you go down to protest.
Yeah, so I was reading bothered as in, but what you're saying bothered is a very low, it's not ideal, but it doesn't really matter so much. Is that what you're saying by when you're saying bothered? Is that the terminology you're using?
Well, that's the smallest level of reaction.
Okay, yeah.
See,
yeah. Okay.
If somebody does something and it bothers you, that is a reaction, even though you don't say anything or do anything, because it bothers you. So what you really want to be is able to not react, and you're not irritated.
Yeah.
And I have been dealing with this my whole life. We're like, people who act in unacceptable ways, I just don't let it bother me. In other words, I'm not reacting to it.
Yeah.
I'm not affected by it. Okay, so this guy is a loudmouth conservative, extremist. Okay. I just let him be that way, and I'm not irritated by it.
Yeah.
I'm not reacting. You see?
Yeah.
Then below that is more of a reaction is where you protest it. I mean, you're critical. Hey, don't act that way.
Yeah.
You're protesting against that. Then below that is you get worried about it. Gee, what am I going to do about this? You're anxious.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're reacting to a point where it's affecting your mental state. Then below that is where you rationalize, or you justify.
Yeah.
So that's worse than being worried.
Yeah.
So you can be worried without rationalizing it. But when you start rationalizing it, that's worse than being worried.
Yeah.
Then below that is you get upset. You're shocked. All right? You see somebody do something and it shocks you.
Yeah.
So you get upset.
Yeah.
See, you're being affected by this. Then below that is shocked which is stunned.
Mm.
You're stunned. You don't know what to say. You're so shocked by it, you don't even get upset.
Yeah.
It's beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that is acting out, which is basically crazy. The person is acting something out.
Yeah. So this is how to, I mean, because like when someone stirs you up, for example, you could react and go, how dare you, and whatever, or, have a big acting out session, or you could be stunned and go, oh, I can't believe you said that. Whereas you could also be higher on the scale and go, well, they said this, but they're doing it to get a reaction out of me. So I might be a little bit irritated by that, but I'm not even going to be bothered with it.
Yeah, that would be level one.
Yeah.
So you see, someone who does not react is not on the scale. He's above the scale.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask, because it seems to be, because that was, and I use that example specifically because I do that a lot now when people do things to get a rise out of you. It's like, I don't even, it doesn't even bother me. It's, so what? That's your opinion and it's not my opinion, and I don't even, it's no need for any reaction.
Right. You're not reacting. So realize if you're not reacting, you're not on the scale of reaction. The scale of reaction.
Blinding flash of the obvious.
Right. Measures how much you're reacting.
Yeah.
And there are 7 different types of reactions.
Yes. Now I get it.
See, some people, you see in movies often that the policeman comes in and says to the wife, your husband was killed in an automobile accident, and she passes out, right? That's level 6.
Completely shocked.
She reacted so severely that she was stunned. She went unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking at how it's addressing how being aware in a specific situation, because it's a specific scale, in that situation, how are you reacting? Does it bother you, or are you, and can you move yourself up? I guess too, there'd be an initial reaction, then a further reaction as well, because you could go either way. You could, you might something happen, you start justifying it, and then you could actually, as you more think about it, more become stunned and then act out and move down the scale. Is that fair to say? Or
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize that you always enter this at level 1, and you move down, sometimes very quickly. So somebody does something outrageous, right?
Yeah.
You're irritated by it. So then what happens then? You protest it, right? You say, how dare you, right? So then if you react more, you start to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then below that, you start rationalizing or justifying.
Yeah.
Well, of course I'm reacting because, he ate his banana with the left hand instead of the right hand.
Yeah.
See, he's rationalizing it.
Yeah.
Then below that, then you get upset. That's a person who loses his temper, starts to yell.
Yeah.
Then below that is being shocked. Oh, you can't, the person is speechless. And then below that, the person acts out.
Yeah.
So that's like a crazy person.
Yeah.
So let's say a guy, I don't know if you know about the term divorce Italian style. Have you ever heard that?
I think I've heard about it. I don't know the meaning. It's kind of
okay. So this is no longer true, but it used to be true in Italy. If the husband came home and found his wife in bed with another man and killed the man, that was considered justifiable homicide.
Right.
In other words, he acted out. He had such a reaction, he pulled out his gun and killed the guy. And that was a defense. It's no longer true, because now they allow, it used to be that you couldn't get divorced in Italy. Italy was so dominated by Catholic Church, they did not permit divorce. So they got modernized and they brought in divorce. So that's no longer justification. You see somebody like that, and so, okay, you get a divorce.
Yeah.
So that was a person who was acting out. I mean, he was as affected as he could be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's the scale of reaction, which is a linear, quantum, and specific scale. That's the last of the individual scales. Maybe that's where we call it stop this one particular one, and we'll come back and do the group scales.
Right.
That's awesome. Is there anything you wanted to add in from the perspective of the individual scales, that is characteristic of all the individual scales? Is there something like that, or something to sum up the individual scales?
Well, the individual scales are how individual phenomena play out. There are 24 different axes of individual phenomena. They're not group phenomena, they're individual phenomena. In other words, it's one person. You're talking about one person, whether it's how you react or how your wife reacts, it's one person. Or, the scale of attack. A person is at some level, single person is at a certain level, and that's how he behaves. Yeah. So it's very different from the group scales. The group scales are inherently multiple, meaning it's not something that one person can be, do, or have. It's a group thing. Like the scale of communication. Scale of communication is a group scale.
Yeah.
In order to have communication, you have to have more than one person.
That's awesome. All right. I look forward to that. Jim, it is always a pleasure chatting with you. It's so exciting. I love your passion and enthusiasm and wanting to get your knowledge out into the world. Thank you for sharing on this CourseCast, and we look forward to part 4 for the group scales.
Yes, and I just want to say to your listeners, I invite you to my website, Septemics.com, where you can see what people have said about the book, what journalists have written about the book, what the reviews are, and you can read parts of the book itself.
Yeah.
And there's a little section there where I give a whole little lecture, recorded lecture, explaining what the subject is. So I invite your people to go there and check it out.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put all those details in the show notes of every episode so they can look at it and find that. All right. Thanks again, Jim.
Right. Thanks, Damien. Have a great day.
Thank you for being part of the Share.Care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.